We're going to start tonight with developing news as Canada seeks to reset relationships with China. A stark reminder this evening of how Beijing operates. Hong Kong's pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai has been sentenced to 20 years in prison under a China-imposed national security law, the stiffest penalty under the law since its inception. You can see on a prison van right here, one of which is believed to be carrying Lai leaving court. Lai has been a fierce critic of Beijing for decades, founding a popular pro-democracy newspaper that ran for 26 years until it was forced to shut down. He was arrested in 2020 and found guilty this past December of conspiring with others to collude with foreign forces to undermine Chinese rule in the territory. Mr. Lai pleaded not guilty to those charges. He has strong Canadian connections as well. His mom was a Canadian citizen, and he has close family living in Ontario. Mr. Lai also has extensive business investments in the Niagara region, including hotels, restaurants, bars, and spas. Canada, along with several other countries today, including the U.S. and EU, have urged for the release of Lai. And domestically, there's been a strong multi-partisan push to grant Lai honorary Canadian citizenship, a push, though, the government has so far refused to take up. With me now is Jimmy Lai's son, Sebastien Lai. Mr. Lai, good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
The sentence was expected, but it doesn't make it any less devastating. One bittersweet moment that did give me a bit of strength and courage was how my father reacted in court. We heard that he was stoic when the sentence was announced, and he smiled at the judges, almost as an act of defiance, to say that you might have imprisoned my body, but you have not imprisoned my spirit. And that despite his health deteriorating so much, that he is still fighting.
Is that in line with who you know your dad to be?
Yeah, I mean, Dad would always tell me, even when I was very young, to, once you know that it's the right thing, there's no need to overthink it. And people hear stories about men like my father, and they think they have no fear. But that's not the case. I know my father. I know he fears. I know he fears dying alone. I know he fears not being able to see his family again. But what my dad did is that he refused to be intimidated by fear. And so every day, him and his journalists decided to report the truth, decided to speak truth to power, no matter the consequences. And when the national security law passed at the end of 2020, many people told my father to leave, but he knew that by leaving, he'd be leaving his principles behind. He'd also be leaving his colleagues behind. So in an act of incredible bravery, he decided to stay and defend his colleague and other pro-democracy campaigners. And he's being punished for that, essentially. He's being punished for the courage in his heart and the strength of his beliefs.
I read someone today describe the sentencing as constituting the criminalization of innocence. Is that accurate in your view?
Yes. They spent 5 years, an enormous amount of resources going through all my father's stuff. There's allegations of witnesses being tortured in a show trial, and they come up with this charge called collusion with foreign forces. And now what does that mean? Collusion necessitates a nefarious benefit. Or what they have found after 5 years was something that they could have asked someone 20 years ago. That the benefit for my father for standing up for democracy was democracy in Hong Kong, was one vote for every single person. And the knowledge that with his work, with his life, he made Hong Kong a freer and better place. Now, that is not a nefarious benefit by any means. My father's obviously an innocent man, but a hero to many around the world as well.
What does what your father has endured and what's happened to your father, what should it tell us about the way that China operates?
I think, multiple states have called out for his release. I think everybody sees this as kind of a very black and white case of at this point, it's just elder abuse. And obviously his health has deteriorated, and it's not in China or Hong Kong's best interest to have him die there, essentially. And after so many states, including Canada, who have called out for his release, if they're not even willing to do something so humane and very easy to do, It'll take them 2 hours to send him to put on a plane and send him away. If they're not even willing to do that, I think that shows you all you need to know about the country's relationship with Hong Kong and China.
And when it comes to the international calls for the release of your father, and as you mentioned, sort of different countries saying and doing different things, there is a push here in this country to grant honorary citizenship to your father. I know that you visited a number of months ago Canada to talk about this. It so far has not, a Liberal sponsored the bill, but that's the governing party, but hasn't made its way through government. It's actually been on pause now for a long time. What do you think, if that materialized, what difference could it make?
I think we'd obviously be tremendously honoured. As you stated before, my grandmother was a Canadian. My father's sister is Canadian, and he has many nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews who they themselves as Canadian. I think if it wasn't for my father's fight for democracy in Hong Kong, he would be in Canada much more often. And so I think it would also give him a lot of strength in knowing that Canada, as a people, as a democracy, as a free country, stands behind him.
Do you ultimately think that pressure in the aggregate from countries like Canada, should that be a decision that Canada takes or other countries take, or a visit from Donald Trump to China in which this issue is raised? Do you think that ultimately could have a meaningful impact on what happens to your dad?
100%. Hong Kong is trying to tell the rest of the world that they still have the rule of law, that they still have free press, which is a complete farce, especially because they're not upholding these promises. And that's very clear. Every single day my father's in prison is a reminder that they have destroyed their own legal system to get to my father. And so countries that do have these freedoms, that do have a rule of law, such as Canada, calling them out is so important, and saying, like, look, we want a normalized relationship or closer relationship or whatever it is. But what you're doing to this man who stood for so much, who stood for so much of the values that we treasure in the free world. If you keep doing that, it's very hard for us to normalize relationships. We're never going to normalize what you're doing to him, at least.
Are you worried that many countries like Canada, in an effort to turn away from the United States, which has made the decision, I should say, to turn away from countries like ours and turn toward Canada, risk kind of muting that, or toward China, pardon me, risk kind of muting that message?
They're not mutually exclusive. In fact, one would argue that they're one and the same. If you want to have a partner with a country, at the very least, the country has to honour its agreements. And in my father's case, it's a very clear breach of the joint Sino-British declaration of one country, two system in Hong Kong, which was promised by China and the United Kingdom to the people of Hong Kong. Now, if they're not willing to uphold a joint declaration that every person in Hong Kong knows about, then why would any other country trust them to uphold their word? And I think every single day my father's in prison is a reminder of that.
Oh, certainly. Thank you very much for making the time, Mr. Lai. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.